So on 31 March 2021, this is Wednesday evening here in Central Europe. It's about 11 p.m. in the evening. The Sun and Saturn will perfect a sextile, a very supportive sextile with each other. This is a very fortifying aspect to have this hump day in the middle of the week here. It's a powerful moment because these are the only two planets in the sky right now that have either exaltation or domicile dignity. Discipline, how can structure, longevity, how can these things support our drive and search for selfhood, for forming a self, for forging an identity in the world as we move into our lives, as we age? How can we rely on becoming more Saturn-like? And I always tell clients, we become Saturn as we age. We are able to embody the Saturn energy. Saturn represents old things and old people. Everybody's getting older every moment. So we're getting more and more Saturn in a way, every moment of time. And that's why they say sometimes Saturn, Father Time, can be a phrase that's related to Saturn, that's related to Saturn or identified with Saturn. But I think here that fire, about this analogy, fire can be analogous to the Sun in Aries right now, this burning fire, the light of self. It's getting stronger and more powerful. And fire is most useful when it's contained, whether like a flamethrower, that Elon Musk thing, or just a fireplace. We have a steel container or copper or whatever we contain the fire in to protect us from it, but to give it utility. Because if you have a stove, for example, you can cook things. When you contain the fire, it actually is able to be deployed in a way that has utility and use for you and for those around you. So that's, I think, the best analogy here is contained fire to maximize potential and maximize utility. And otherwise it can do great harm. If we don't contain it, we have this harm component with the fire. And so let's just jump into the chart of the aspect. I'm really interested in the chart, partially because, like I had just already alluded to, we have Saturn and Aquarius here, where its domicile rules, it's domicile ruled. I was going to say that's probably not the best way to say it, where it has domicile rulership. It's the master and the owner of Aquarius, you might think of it that way. Firmicus Maternus has the house, master and house metaphor. I think there's another way to say it, but basically the planet that rules a sign by domicile is like the owner or master of that house, so that people who are passing through have to answer back to that owner. And so it's just one of the most fundamental analogies in how rulership works and why it's so important. But Saturn rules Aquarius via domicile rulership, and then you see the sextile here, the sweet sextile with the Sun in Aries. The Sun is also now in that middle decan of Aries during this I think it's happening. The Sun's there as I record this, but it also will be in that middle decan of Aries when this aspect perfects, and that's a Sun-ruled decan. It's very magical energy, very powerful magical energy right now, with the solar energetic coming in with force and with great, like I was saying, fortitude at the beginning here, but just great potential to bring in wonderful things into the reality. I mean, I'm a big believer in the will of the individual as the primary driver of innovation. Not that the collective isn't important, but I just think about like Jackson Pollock or these artists that are just in a moment of almost isolation and separation have breakthroughs, and they see things differently. They do things in a new way. My favorite poetic moral or ethic is the make it new idea from Ezra Pound. I just love it. You have to make language new. Language is always shifting and changing. And now we're getting into a little bit of the Mercury. Maybe this is the Mercury in Pisces influencing me, but we have to make it new. And that's how we have vivacity, music that's popular. That's all new. Memes are new combinations of things. And so there's an idea here, if you have the power of the fire of the individual, and Saturn can be isolation. You see it as imprisonment, as separation, and being isolated. You combine those two things with an easygoing sextile, and you get things like breakthroughs of the inner fire that come out in new forms and that drive the collective forward. Because if you have enough individuals innovating in this way, then the collective knows and there's the wisdom there, and then we'll take on and emulate, and that's how culture moves ahead. People copy, and there's innovation. And so this is what I think of here, that Aries season is kind of emblematic of this expression. The days are longer than the nights in the northern hemisphere. So there's a sense of expanding where you have more time in the day to do things out in the world. And this would be the idea that we need daylight to maybe build like construction. You can't really do that at night very well. Most construction workers go home when it gets dark. There's certain things, many things that daylight requires, or that daylight is necessary to enact a lot of the outward activity in the world. And most humans' biorhythms start falling off after nightfall. Mine doesn't. Mine's crazy. I'm staying up at all times. But I think that this is part of why we have this idea of growing and expanding during Aries season, because now we can be outside longer to do more, to build more. So, and most of the world's population lives in the northern hemisphere. So most people on the earth right now are feeling this expanded energy. And if we think about the world as just one collective mass or entity, even in the southern hemisphere, they might be experiencing this sense of expansion because most of the population is. And it's an interesting question about southern hemisphere astrology. I'd like to do some more thinking on that at some point, but I do believe there is a resonance no matter what hemisphere you're in. And most of the southern hemisphere astrologers I know practice that way, and they tell me that they feel that way as well. So the thing is that Saturn also cools things. It's discipline, it's old things. And I think this idea of fire needing a container that I mentioned earlier, it's a carefully constructed receptacle that hopefully has power and is protective. But we have this new world. I keep talking about it. I probably will keep talking about it. It's undeniably so, and it's extremely important now that there's new rules coming in. Every day I turn on the news, it's like now the governments will say this app is necessary to do things, or these are the rules for where you can go. So we're in a new world, a new digified landscape, new rule sets. And I think here about how Saturn and Aquarius is both implementing these new rules, but it's also an opportunity to think about our old teachers, the wisdom of old, you might say, and how we can use that, because nothing's really new under the sun. I mean, we can look back at history and see times just like this. It is new, it is fresh in certain ways, but it's also not. And so maybe there's old writers or old thinkers or history books that can be instructive right now to help us navigate the new rule set. I'm a believer, I have my spiritual beliefs and spiritual practices. I really rely on those, and they're tethered to the ancient world. Even this astrological practice is tethered, and particularly my style of the Hellenistic infused astrology is tethered to the ancient world. So I do think the ancient world can be important right now. Saturn, and then that's the sextile to the sun, as we try to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to thrive in this new reality. The age of air, Saturn ruling Aquarius in Aquarius until March 2023, Jupiter in Aquarius will finish its time there at the end of this year. So there's this air Aquarian energy that we've just incepted in 2020 and into 2021. And how are we going to do that? This sextile is an opportunity to, one, accept the new structures, face them, try to move ahead and let them push us ahead. I've been telling a lot of people, get digital. You might not like it. I certainly have problems with it, but getting digital has allowed me to connect with masses of people all over the world. It's a way to embrace this new age of air. This is a supportive aspect to step forward into that. And then the final thing I'll just say is that the sextile is the aspect that's of the nature of Venus. What is Venus? It's pleasure, feeling good, connection. And I think that we can think about the sun and Saturn feeling good together. Just like I said, you contain the fire, then you can get up close to it and feel warm, right? So the Saturn-Sun sextile can hopefully have us feel good, a little bit of pleasure here, enjoying the longevity of things, the ancient things, and enjoying this opportunity. My favorite quote, Shawshank Redemption, that movie, get busy living or get busy dying. And I mean, a lot of us are having to just say, all right, and for me, my philosophy is just embrace it. Let's move into the new reality. Let's make it as robust and beautiful and plentiful as we can. And there's an acceptance quality that can come with that sextile. All right, let's get busy living, and especially that Aries sun. Let's move in to 2021 and just accept the way that things are going if we can. Now there might be time to resist too, but finding that balance for yourself and get into the rest of your year and have a wonderful, wonderful spring. And this aspect, I think, is going to propel you into that. As always, sjanderson144.com. You can book a reading with me. Click here to schedule a reading right at the top. I look forward to reading for you, and enjoy this week and enjoy this aspect. Talk soon.